Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started in the interest of time. So welcome everybody to our APA Scholars webinar about graduate schools. So everything you want to know about graduate schools. We have a wonderful, wonderful panel here of professional in admissions as well as current scholars that are in graduate school. So they have a lot of great expertise and tips to share with everybody. So please have questions available for them. And with that being said, if you want to, of course, you can definitely do your audio and video, but you also could write in your questions too in the chat area, and we will definitely capture that and ask our panelists those questions too when we get to a little bit later in our webinar session. But first, let me definitely have our staff introduce themselves. So we're going to start doing that right now. So we're going to go ahead and introduce our staff.
All right. I guess that means I'm starting. Hello, everyone. My name is Melissa May. I am the director of the Gates Millennium Scholars Program, as well as APIA Scholars Programs here at APIA Scholars. I've been on the team for about 4 years, and I'm really excited to have this stellar group of scholars share their experiences with you this afternoon, because they are the experts and have the inside information. So yeah, really excited about today's conversation.
Hi everyone, my name is Michael Blakely. I'm a programs assistant at GMS. I've been working here for about, I think, now going on 4 or 5 months, maybe 4 or 5 months. I started out as an intern here for like about a year, almost a year now. I'm really excited for this. I myself I'm looking at grad programs, so I'm really excited to learn more. So thank you.
Hello again, I'm Ariane Martin. I'm a program manager here at GMS API Scholars, and I'm also going to be your MC for the next hour. And so I'm going to be doing introductions of our wonderful panelists, and also we'll read any questions that come through during our question and answer session. I've been with the organization for a little over 4 years, and really excited to be hosting this particular webinar. I know we're going to get some great information too, which is terrific. So we're going to go a quick overview of the hour of the day. So first we're going to have our wonderful Miss Michelle Darian, who's Diversity Outreach Coordinator from University of California, Berkeley, who's going to go through her wonderful slides on the admissions process for graduate school. Then after that, we're going to have a scholar panel. We have Cindy Lee, Andrew Nguyen, Johnny Ye, and then Ashish Kandarian. They're going to talk a little bit about their experiences and also offer advice, tips on the graduate process. Some of them are already in graduate school, so they'll talk a little bit about that. I'm going to start it off with a few questions for them, and then after that, we will definitely open it for questions and answers. So please definitely have some questions for this great, great panel group. So let me do an introduction on our wonderful guest, Michelle Darian, who is, excuse me, she has an MPH in, she's from the MPH department, the Diversity Outreach Coordinator for the DREAM office, and holds a BS in Neuroscience from UCLA and an MPH in Public Health Nutrition from UC Berkeley. Post-college, her internships with the Orange County Food Access Coalition and the Riverside County Public Health Department's Heal Zone initiative helped her realize her passion for improving food security and reducing diet-related health disparities. Once at Berkeley, she volunteered with the Berkeley versus Big Soda campaign to pass the nation's first soda tax and spent her summer internship working on projects related to food access, local food and urban agricultural policy, and community engagement for Long Beach Fresh and the Berkeley Food Institute. Michelle also loves to help students navigate the field of public health in graduate school, which she has been able to do in her current role as a former Grad's coordinator for the DREAM office. So Michelle, take it away.
Awesome, thank you so much. Again, my name is Michelle, and I represent the UC Berkeley School of Public Health Dream Office, and just want to extend a huge thank you to Arian and the rest of the APIA team for inviting me to be a part of this webinar. So it's so great to meet all of you on here, and I hope we can continue to connect after the day is done. So you could skip a couple slides to office slide. And to tell you more about the DREAM Office and what we do, DREAM stands for Diversity, Respect, Equity, Action, and Multiculturalism. We are the Office of Diversity Services at the School of Public Health, and our mission is to increase the diversity of the public health workforce by supporting students from underrepresented minority and first-generation college backgrounds in applying to graduate programs in public health. So we offer a bunch of different programs and services to support prospective applicants and current students on their graduate school paths, from advising and mentoring to application assistance. So I know not all of you on here are applying to grad schools in public health, but for those of you who are or who are curious to learn more about the field, please know that my team and I are here as a resource for you after today if you want to get more specialized assistance. All right, next slide, please. So in this portion of the webinar, I'll be covering the graduate application components and providing some advice that I have for each, based both on my experience as an applicant and as someone who has participated in admissions review. I'll be using the public health application process as an example, but do know that most of these components will be the same across programs. So I'll try my best to make note of instances in which you'll want to check with your specific program of interest about how it might differ. All right, next slide, please. Thank you. So your first step when getting ready to apply is to identify the required application components for all of the schools you're interested in applying to. And I'd recommend even making an Excel sheet or using some sort of other organizational mechanism to help keep track of everything. There will likely be an application portal of some sort, and then you'll have to submit transcripts, possibly take a standardized test, submit letters of rec, essays and supplemental questions, and then a resume or a CV. For some programs, there may be a secondary application or an interview process. So make sure to do your research to see what's required of each. You should be able to find this information on the program's websites, but don't hesitate to reach out to program staff or even a current student if you're unsure or if it's confusing, because we're all here to help you. All right, next slide, please. So you also need to keep track of what your timeline is. Some schools will provide a timeline as a guide. For others, you'll have to figure that out on your own. But basically, you want to center everything around when the application portal is open and when they're due, and plan your exam dates, your essay writing, and your recommendation letter requests around that. For the UC Berkeley School of Public Health, our applications have a fall cycle. So that means they open end of August, early September-ish, and then our priority deadline is December 1st. We also have a secondary deadline in March, but in general, my recommendation is when it comes to programs that have these multiple deadlines, I'd encourage you to just get it in by the priority deadline to increase your chances. Some other programs don't have a fall cycle, but they have a spring cycle and they'll be due in May. Some even have rolling deadlines where they accept applications every few months. So again, know what the requirements are for each program that you want to apply to. Next slide, please. So here at our School of Public Health, we require 2 application portals. First, there is a centralized application portal called SOFUS, which is for all schools of public health. In this system, you would submit all of your materials, like your test scores, your transcripts, just to SOFUS, and then you mark in SOFUS which schools you want them to send your materials to, and then you have to pay a fee for each one. So for many schools of public health, your only requirement is to fill out the SOFUS application. However, here at Cal, you also have to fill out the Berkeley-specific graduate division application, which asks some supplemental questions and then requires a second fee. Next slide, please. So it's important to note that for some other graduate programs, like in social welfare or education, for example, they may not have a centralized portal like SOFAS, and they only have the graduate division application, and that's where you'll send and upload all of your materials. So again, do your research on what's required and know where to send your stuff. As you know, GMS or APIA scholars, I'd also recommend asking the schools that you're applying to if you can get a fee waiver, because they may not charge you if you have the, you know, certain income background, and just ask them what the process looks like to obtain one.
And just real quick on that, Michelle, GMS does provide any scholars who are applying to public health schools SOFAS waivers.
Awesome.
So you can contact our office if you need a waiver.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Next slide, please. All right, so transcripts. So you'll have to submit transcripts from each institution that you've attended. This includes community college and summer session courses. I'd recommend finding out if there is a minimum GPA requirement and if it's a hard cutoff. We don't do this at Berkeley, but it's possible that some schools may not even look at your application if you're below the cutoff, so you should be sure to check. For our School of Public Health, although we state on our website that you must have a minimum 3.0 upper division GPA, which is everything from your last 2 years, you can actually still apply if you have less than that, and we'll still read your application. In fact, we've admitted people with below a 3.0 if they had compelling reasons for having a lower GPA in undergrad, and if the other components of their application are very strong to make up for it. So see if the programs that you're applying to have that flexibility if your GPA is an area of concern. You should also find out if the program has specific course requirements. For our School of Public Health, we don't have any, but there may be other public health programs that will require, say, a biology or statistics class, for example. So if you didn't take those classes in undergrad, you'll want to take it online or to community college or something if they accept that. And lastly, you want to make sure to send your transcripts to the right place. This is really important. We require that you only send your transcripts to SOFAS, but sometimes we still get students who send them directly to our school, and we don't accept that. So if you don't send your transcripts to SOFAS, your application will be marked as incomplete. So just be really careful about knowing where to send them, having your addresses correct, and get these for yourself just in case. Okay, next slide, please. So next up are your standardized exams. For our School of Public Health, that's the GRE. For some programs, they may have a cutoff. For others, like ours, they don't. So again, find that out. Some programs may not even require the GRE. So again, make sure to do your research. But in general, with these standardized tests, if you have to take one, try to aim high, especially if you have a weaker GPA, because the GRE could help make up for that. You can also take it more than once if you need to, and if you really just don't do well on standardized tests, that's okay, try your best, but again, make sure the other areas of your application are stronger to make up for it. Some tips that I have for the GRE are to know what study skills work best for you, to give yourself adequate time to prepare, and to not overstudy. I think I took like 3 to 4 months to study, and this was while working part-time. If you're working full-time, maybe you'll need 6 months, or if you're not working at all, maybe you can knock it out within 1 to 2 months. It's different for everyone. So know what you need in order to do well, and definitely consider using study aids like Princeton Review Books, Kaplan Courses, or Magoosh. I've heard really good things about that website. The GRE is not, it's important to know that the GRE is not an exam that tests your knowledge or shows how intelligent or capable or qualified you are. What it really demonstrates is how good you are at taking the GRE. So these test prep books and websites are helpful for teaching you strategy. Another thing that's helpful to know is that the GRE lasts for 5 years. So if you're still in undergrad or if you're a recent graduate, consider taking it sooner rather than later while your study skills and math skills are still fresh. Okay, you can skip to the letters of recommendation slide, please. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so for letters of rec, I think most programs will ask for at least 3 letters of recommendation from a combination of both professional and academic recommenders. Usually what we tell students is that if you've graduated within the past 5 years, you'll want to get at least one professor to write you a letter, or you can have a TA write it and have a professor co-sign it if you didn't have a strong relationship with a professor. But it's important to get someone who can speak to your academic strengths. The other letters can be from supervisors, PIs, preceptors, or whoever can speak to your skills in the workplace or in a research setting. Now, this next tip may seem obvious, but when you ask for a letter of rec, make sure to ask if they can write a positive letter of rec. A letter writer may not tell you whether or not they plan to write you a strong or weak letter, so it would be better to have them not write one at all if they can't confirm that it'll be positive. My other suggestion is to ask people who know you and can really speak to your strengths rather than someone who has a background in public health or whatever area of interest you're applying to. It's less important that they have training or knowledge in that area and more important that they really know you. I'd also suggest, if you want to make things easier for them, to send them bullet points about things that you'd like for them to highlight. Remind them about specific projects that you worked on or assignments you did, and maybe send them a copy of your personal statements too. Okay, next slide, please. All right, next up we have the essays. So some schools may only ask you for one essay or personal statement. For our public health program here at Berkeley, we require 2 essays. There's the statement of purpose and the personal history statement, and I'll go over each one. So, and I'll say that when I was applying to graduate school, this was challenging because, like, having the 2 essays, because some public health schools that only asked for one, like, I basically had to figure out how to say everything I wanted to say given those requirements and page restrictions, and it took quite a bit of work. So just give yourself adequate time to make those edits. So to go over the difference between the 2 essays, the statement of purpose is like any other personal statement. It's focused on your academic and professional goals. You basically want to answer questions like, why do I want to apply to this school? Why do I want to apply to this program? And why do I want to do it now? And you want to discuss how all of your previous professional and academic experiences have led you to this point. This essay can be tricky because you want to demonstrate that you have a strong understanding of the area that you want to pursue, but you also want to explain your gaps in knowledge and what you don't know, hence why you need further training and a graduate degree to pursue your career goals. So the statement of purpose kind of has to be this perfect balance of like selling yourself while also being humble, which can be tough. And so I strongly suggest having a second reader, if not a third, to make sure that you're satisfying this and answering all of the questions provided in the prompt. Next slide, please. So the second essay, which is the personal history, is more focused on who you are as a person and kind of your personal reasons for wanting to pursue the area that you're pursuing. It's our opportunity as admissions reviewers to get to know you on a deeper level. And while there will be some overlap with the statement of purpose, it should be its own unique essay. In the essay, you'll also want to explain if there's any barriers that you've had to overcome to get to where you are today. It's the place to explain any like quote unquote red flags that may be on your application. For example, if you have a low GPA, like something below 3.0, maybe because you were working multiple jobs or caring for your family, or if you have a lower GRE score because you couldn't study as well because you had a chronic disease or something like that. This is kind of the place to explain that. So without making excuses, you want to articulate how you overcame these challenges, and will continue to do so in graduate school. Now, like I mentioned earlier, some applications will only require one essay. So if the programs don't give you an opportunity to write a personal history statement, find ways to integrate those topics into your statement of purpose, or see if there's another section on the application that asks for supplemental information where you can put it. Next slide, please. So some final tips that I have for the essays are to double check spelling and grammar. I know that's an obvious one, but we get a lot of essays with typos. So, you know, this just demonstrates your attention to detail and shows that you actually care. Also, please make sure that the names of the programs and schools you're applying to are correct. I can't tell you the number of times students have applied to the UC Berkeley School of Public Health but wrote UCLA or Columbia in their essays, and it does not reflect very well. Additionally, really incorporate the feedback you get from your other readers. When I wrote my essays and got feedback the first couple times, I chose to rewrite them from scratch entirely, and they came out so much better in the end. So don't be afraid to put in that extra work if you have to, because the essays are a really important aspect of your application. Lastly, stick to the page limits and the word or character counts. You have to remember that these admissions reviewers are reading, hundreds of essays. So do what they ask for and try to be concise, but also don't take any shortcuts, like share your story and share your authentic self. All right, next slide, please. So lastly, for most programs, or all programs, I imagine you'll have to submit a resume or CV demonstrating real life experience. This can be research, internships, volunteering, clinical experience, or full-time work. Make sure to check with the programs you're applying to and ask if they require full-time work experience post-grad. Some do. And if you don't have it, you want to consider taking a gap year to work and make yourself a more competitive applicant. For public health, there are a lot of awesome summer programs and fellowship programs you might consider, and listservs you can join, and I'm shamelessly plugging our Dream Office newsletter here if you're interested, and I'll share that link at the end on my last slide. Next slide, please. So you might also consider joining programs like AmeriCorps, Peace Corps, or Teach for America after you graduate, which will look really great on the application because they demonstrate a commitment to service, and some might even help you with additional funds for graduate school. Next slide, please. All right, so my final piece of advice is to utilize the resources presented to you. Again, for those of you interested in public health, our office provides a ton of advising services, and we have an entire team of current students who serve as peer advisors for our school. Current students are honestly, in my opinion, the best people to tell you about their experience applying, how they made their application competitive, and what their experience has been like in their program. So you can make sure it's a good fit for you. And it's awesome that you have an entire panel of students to tell you about that today. But I encourage you to try to connect one-on-one with people after that as well. And again, if the schools that you're applying to don't have formal advising services like we do at Cal, just ask their program managers to see what supports they can offer, and if they can connect you directly with current students. All right, last slide, please. And I just want to end by saying that I know that was a lot of information, but please feel free to connect with me after. I'm happy to help. So my contact information is there. Our grads team are current students. So if you want to reach out to current students in public health, you can email us phgrads@berkeley.edu. We're pretty active on Instagram and Facebook, and then the bit.ly/dreamsphnews will link you to our newsletter. We do profiles of current students and alums. You can see what they're working on and what they're interested in. And then, like I said, we send out job and internship opportunities as well, and updates about the application process. So please keep in touch after today. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Michelle. That is a lot of awesome information. So hopefully our participants have absorbed all the great information. I'm going to go into the next segment to our webinar, and that's to do an introduction of our scholars who are going through their graduate programs, have been through the process, and will share their experiences and their tips. But we'll also have time. I'll make sure that there's time for the audience to do ask questions of the panel as well as Michelle. So there'll be time to be able to ask those questions a little bit later on. So let's go on to our next portion, which is our scholar panel. We have some wonderful scholars here. I'm going to do a little quick rundown of their bios who are on the webinar. So we're going to start off with Cindy Lee, who earned her BS in Public Policy from Rutgers University. She is now a second-year graduate student pursuing an MPH degree in Health Behavior and Health Education at the University of Michigan School of Public Health. Her research interests focus on violence, prevention, racism, mental health, communities of color, urban neighborhoods, and community-based participatory research. She serves as an admissions ambassador for the school and the diversity, equity, inclusion student representative for her department. Thank you, Cindy, for being on the webinar. Next is Andrew Nguyen, a graduating senior, or actually graduated already from UCLA. This coming fall, he'll be headed to Yale University to pursue his master's in public health. So Michelle, we have a lot of public health people here on the panel. He is an uncle to the most adorable 22-month-old niece, and during his free time, you can find him taking photographs of the ones that he loves, traveling, journaling, or going on a jog. A few words to describe himself is artistic, creative, kind, and adventurous. Next, we have Johnny A., who's from Madison, Wisconsin, and currently attends Teachers College, Columbia University, class of 2020, pursuing an MA in higher and post-secondary education. During his free time, he enjoys swimming, spoken word poetry, dancing, and vegan cuisine. He currently works as a research assistant for the College Educational Quality Project at Teachers College. As an academic scholar, his research interests revolve around frameworks related to and conducive to the goals and values of diversity on college campuses. Ashish Darian, who graduated with a degree in quantitative biology, computer science from UNC Chapel Hill, is currently working on his master's in physiology and biotechnology at NC State. He leveraged the opportunities given to him by the Moorhead Kane Scholarship and the Gates Millennium Scholarship to augment his interest in computer engineering, assistive technology, and health science technology. His passions lie within the artificial intelligence, machine learning, and cloud services. The skills he has gained from various internships, volunteering experiences, coursework, and extracurricular passions will enable him to be a strong asset to his teams. So, wonderful backgrounds and great schools too. So, to kick it off, I'm just going to ask our panelists, start off with a question. Probably a couple of questions just to kick it off, and then after that we'll go to our audience to see if they have some questions of the panelists and as well as Michelle. So for any of our panelists, here's the first question. How did you choose your graduate program?
I can answer that.
Go down the line.
All right, so for me, can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. The first thing that I considered when looking for graduate programs was its location. So I know for me, my field is higher education, and so there's a finite number of high quality graduate programs for me. And a lot of these were in places that I did not see myself living. So places like Texas or in the Midwest, so like back in my hometown in Wisconsin, there's really good graduate programs for my field, but I couldn't see myself living in those areas. I was very interested in New York City, and I really liked LA, and so those are the schools that I applied for. And if I didn't see myself living in that area, I didn't bother applying for it, even if I knew they had great faculty or if their programs were really good. So, yeah.
Thanks, Johnny.
Yeah, I was going to say I chose my graduate program based off like speaking to current students and learning about the program itself. And what really intrigued me with Yale was like their faculty-student ratio, and I believe it's like a 3-to-1. And so that was one of the biggest selling points for me. And just knowing that there was a lot of resources and networks for job opportunities and internships. So that was something that I was looking for in a grad school.
I definitely second Johnny and Andrew. During my MPH process, as well as right now I'm going to be applying to the PhD cycle. So things I'm also considering is like, what's the financial package that the school is going to give you? So if you're thinking about PhD programs, a lot of people will say that if they're not giving you some sort of full package, then it's not worth something considering, because PhD programs are supposed to be fully funded. So that was like a major factor for me, and definitely fit within like faculty that I was interested in working with was a big driver for why I chose a certain program.
Thank you. I'm going to give another question out there, and then we'll go to our audience. So how was your graduate admissions experience? And anybody can jump in.
So the experience for me was basically I knew like since like my junior year of college that I wanted to apply for grad school. So I kept that in the back of my mind, and I took the GRE the beginning of my junior year, and then I took it again the beginning of my senior year at UCLA. And in that time frame, I just developed a lot of public health experiences to help me see like a more competitive applicant for the admissions process. And basically I applied in August of my senior year, and then I asked for letters of rec. Sorry, I'm going to backtrack. I asked for letters of rec during my junior year, and I asked for letters of rec during the summer as well. And so it depended on the professor or the person that I was asking, whether it was at my internship or someone from UCLA. And then after that, I applied in August, and I wrote my personal statement and personal history statements, depending on the schools that I applied to, during that summer as well. And then I had around like 4 to 5 mentors of mine read over my application and my personal statement, and they got it back and forth to me. And so I just kind of made it more how I wanted it to sound. And so after that, I submitted my application around mid-November, and that was my process of graduate.
Thanks for sharing, Andrew. For me, I applied for 5 graduate programs, and how I prepared for it, I basically, just kept doing what I did in college, which was like a lot of different research projects. And then towards the end of my junior year, so like the summer before my senior year, I took, for the GREs, I kind of just, how I studied, I just took like 3 different practice tests online, and then I took it in the fall. I think, honestly, I think it was a lot easier than what people say it is, but I know it might be different for everyone, but I think it helped me to not over stress about it or spend too much time on it. And then I had really good mentors who were well known in the field, and so I fed into those relationships and built upon those relationships, and that led me to a lot of other great places and other opportunities like Teachers College. And I guess a piece of advice is, whatever field you're in, I would say try to get to know the people who are well known in that field at your university, or people who know other people who are well known in that university, because in my opinion, I think graduate school is just being a part of an intellectual community. And so the more people you know in that community, the more people will be able to help you to get to where you want to go. So I applied in the fall, and then I heard back within the spring. And then I got to choose between Madison, Wisconsin, UCLA, and Teachers College in New York. And I chose Teachers College because, obviously, one, they have a great higher ed program, and also I wanted to live in New York, and I could see myself being happy here. And so that's like a brief overview of my experience for my graduate admissions.
Thanks, y'all, for sharing your experiences. For me, knowing that it had Gates kind of made me always consider the possibility of like, I should pursue graduate school because I have the funding to do so. And at a certain point, I realized that I wanted to be a professor. Luckily at my campus, we had the Ronald E. McNair Post-Baccalaureate Achievement Program. So it was a program meant to help underrepresented students, low-income, first-generation students pursue doctoral studies. So I was able to do research with that and work with one of my mentors who has similar interests with me. And then I kept on making sure that my summers were filled with some sort of experience. So I kept on doing research programs. And I'm going to be very open and honest that despite having all these resources, I struggled with so much doubt and imposter syndrome. I didn't take the GRE until late into September. And I asked my recommenders probably in October, but even then I was still doubting myself whether or not I deserved to be in such a space. And would I even get accepted and all of that. So I've applied, I submitted everything the beginning of December. And so you really have to keep in mind with SOFAST that it takes 2 to 4 weeks to process your application. So for University of Michigan, my application didn't get processed until 4 days after the deadline. So I was crippled with anxiety. I was really upset with myself. But in January, I started hearing back. The 4 schools that I applied to, I got accepted to all 4 of them. And Michigan gave me a scholarship despite me being 4 days late. So no matter what you're experiencing, just push forward with it. You're never too late. Like, I'm gonna advise you to be proactive, but don't second guess yourself. And right now I'm considering applying to a PhD, so I've been preparing for that. So something important for you to consider, possibly in the summer or like August, September, you should reach out to potential PhD advisors. Either send them emails introducing yourself, asking them if they're accepting students in the next application cycle, or asking to set up a phone call. And I've been able to set up phone calls with potential advisors, and it's been an amazing stepping stone to understand what kind of environment they have, as well as connecting with their students.
Awesome, that is great, you guys. So I'm going to pause for a moment. I'm going to stop asking questions, though I have more to ask, but I do want to pause and see if our audience has any questions. You can either come up on the audio video, or if you're wanting to and rather just write it in the chat area, then feel free. So I'm going to just take a few seconds to see if we've got any questions. If we don't, then I will kind of keep rolling and ask our lovely panelists some other questions that I've already prepared. So we're going to just take a second to see if we've got anything. Looks like we might have a question. Excellent. Great. Thank you. It looks like it's from Sana. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. Did any of you get financial aid from FAFSA, which is the free federal aid, student aid form? So did any of you get financial aid from FAFSA?
Yeah, I got I got about like 7,000 from financial aid for work study, and that was the only aid that I got from FAFSA. I mean, scholarships and stuff at Teachers College specifically is not as abundant. So also depending on the college where you go to, they may or may not have scholarships readily available. Teachers College, it's kind of a no-no.
For me, I didn't get any scholarships from this, sorry, not scholarships. I didn't get any financial aid from the schools I applied to, but I did get like merit scholarships, and that was based off my application. So in general, like from my experiences and speaking to other students who have also applied to public health programs in my cycle, there weren't a lot of financial aid offered, and it was more loans. And so just keep that in mind.
Same situation for me. I didn't necessarily get aid. So the 4 places that I applied to, Boston University, I think they offered me a work study, and then they offered me a scholarship just for 1 year. Emory only offered me a work study. Columbia refused, or just gave me a loan. Michigan offered me 75% of my tuition paid. So something to consider is that at the master's level, it's very difficult to get financial aid. And it's mainly, the most you're going to get from a school is with merit scholarships. So even though for something, for Columbia and specifically, I wasn't considered for a scholarship because their scholarships were merit-based, so you had to score 80th percentile on all sections of your GRE. So that's something to consider. For the PhD, if you're considering a PhD, then it should be fully funded, or you can try to negotiate how much aid you can get.
Can I?
Yes. Yeah, please, Michelle.
So Something I'll add is that after you find out what schools you're admitted to, don't be afraid to advocate for yourself too and ask for money if you need it. Again, this should happen after you get accepted, not before. But after you get your acceptances and say, you know, University of Michigan offered you a full ride scholarship, but you really want to go to Columbia, let Columbia know and say, look, Columbia is my top choice and I think the best fit for me. And I really would like to be considered for financial aid. University of Michigan gave me a full ride. So you can kind of use offers from other schools as leverage. And yeah, and again, like, don't be afraid to ask, because sometimes these schools have pockets of funding that are sitting there. And if they really want you and you're really competitive to them, they'll find ways to dig up that money for you. So advocate for yourself.
Great, thank you. That's some good advice too. Any other questions?
Yeah, that's a great. I just wanted to share an anecdote on that. I think that's something, what Michelle just mentioned, is something that people had always told me, like, yeah, after you get in, like, try to ask for extra funding, but I always felt weird about it. And so this year my sister was applying for a graduate school, and I told her to do it because people had told me to do it, even though I never felt comfortable doing it. And she did, and ended up getting an extra like $25,000 from the University of Chicago. So it is something that works. And I never really fully believed it before, but now I do. So just wanted to share that.
Yeah, you know, oh, sorry.
Sorry. Also to mention, I've been talking to some doctoral students, specifically at UCLA, because I'm considering applying there. And one of them, he got offered, his initial offer was just one full year funding, but that was still shaky whether or not it was guaranteed. So he negotiated and told them that he received the other package. And initially they said no, but he kept a good relationship with them. And then closer to the semester, they offered him 4 to 5 years, fully funded guarantee with housing. So just keep in touch, even if they say no, because it might work out.
Yeah, I think there's a way to do it without being too aggressive, you know, and I can understand that it can feel really uncomfortable to ask for that money. But as someone who's been on the receiving ends of those emails, like, we get those requests all the time. And I think as long as you do it in a respectful manner, in a way that isn't too demanding, in a way that's genuine, the program staff or faculty won't see it as a burden or annoying. It's a legitimate request and a legitimate student concern. So the fear is understandable, but I don't think you should let it hold you back.
Great, thank you. Another second or two to see if we've got any questions out there. Don't be shy. This is a great opportunity to get those questions answered by our panelists, scholars, our wonderful professional, Michelle. If not, I'm going to go ahead and ask another question. Oh, yay, question. Okay. So do you have any tips on what to ask to include for letters of recommendations?
Something to consider is that, for example, during my undergraduate career, I took calculus, and I got a C, and took a statistics class and got an A. And during my master's experience, I've only taken one stats class. So my quantitative skills are not that well shown. So I know that's like an area that I really need to make sure that the committee knows that is still strong. So I might tell my recommenders, like, hey, could you really speak about that research project I did, that I run like certain analyses? Could you vouch for me that I do have the ability to excel in that kind of area? So that's something that you may consider in terms of, like, you're feeling really nervous about one area of yourself, to ask your recommender to advocate for.
For me, I had 3 letters of recommendation, and each of the people that I asked to write recommendation worked with me in very different ways. So the first one that I had was one of my mentors, which was an academic advisor. Or no, not an academic advisor. He was a professor who helped me with my research, and he was well known in the field. And so he was able to talk upon my skill sets in terms of conducting research and collecting data and being independent in that sense. The second person I asked was one of my employers. I worked in student government, and I handled hundreds and thousands of dollars of budgets. And so I was able to ask her to write about my responsibilities and working with administrators and other student groups, things like that. So working in the community basically at UCLA. And then the third letter of recommendation, I had a teacher, a professor who did a lot of activism with me. And so this is somebody who took me into like to teach art classes in prisons. And so she was able to talk upon my activism and just my passion for the things I wanted to change in the world. And so those are 3 very different views of me that each of my letters of recommenders, or each of my letters of rec was able to articulate about me as an applicant.
Add on with all that, I remember asking my recommenders, like, for example, I asked my professor to speak on the behalf of my ability to work in a classroom setting and analyze different issues, whereas when my work preceptor that I asked highlighted my abilities to work in a practice research-based public health setting. And so there's different aspects that you can try to implement into the letters of rec. And if you just provide them your personal statement and your resume, and then maybe a couple bullet points of what you want to get highlighted into the letter of rec, that would be very helpful. So like if you have like low GRE scores or low GPA, perhaps ask them to highlight why that this wouldn't really affect your ability to do well in graduate school.
Great, thank you. I'm just gonna check to see if any other questions have popped up. All right, let me just go ahead and ask another question, and then hopefully that will then, get other folks to ask questions. So, and this is probably more geared towards Cindy and Johnny, who are currently in graduate school. Share some of your things, the transition from undergrad to graduate school. Share a little bit about maybe the tips or the experience doing that transition.
For me, I think something that is very different about graduate school is that I feel like there are less resources for building community. So in undergrad, there's so many different clubs, organizations, like, on campus events. But for graduate school, for me, I feel like in terms of community and making friends, I really had to put the effort in to make friends or to show interest in being friends with other people. And then in like community spaces, I really had to like seek those out on my own. So like most of my friend groups are much smaller now, but they're also much more tight knit. And so that was something that was very different for me. Also graduate school, all of my classes are related to higher education. And so I'm much more attentive to, I'm basically becoming an expert in my field, and all the classes that I'm taking are related to my field. And so that's very different from undergrad, where I was taking like science and math, which are things that were helpful, but just not of my expertise. And so that's a little transition that I've been having to make as well. I think the biggest thing is feeling like nobody cares about me because I feel like there's so many things going on, but like unless I put the effort and have the willpower to go out and do things and meet people, if I'm not willing to do that, then it would be a very lonely experience. But I'm fortunate to have a lot of great people that I have met so far, so it's been easy to transition. So meet people and make good relationships.
I 100% second Johnny. I say that's like the major difference between my undergraduate experience to graduate experience. Right after getting my bachelor's, I went into graduate school. And automatically the first day it was like clicks in the department and like all other departments. And for my school, like if you're in a certain department, you're kind of siloed in. So it was very difficult meeting people, meeting folks who had similar interests. So the first few months felt extremely lonely. And you also have to realize that everyone's coming from a different place and are currently doing different things. Because part of my cohort, they're also working like either full-time or part-time during the program. So there's not a lot of organizations or some sort of communities that you can like find yourself to be a part of. So definitely try to connect with folks and get involved in like smaller ways. I serve on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, so I'm able to find like-minded folks who really care about communities of color and feeling safe in like predominantly white spaces.
Great, thank you. And then for Andrew, I don't want to have you feel left out. So I know you're going to be starting your grad program this fall. What are some of your, I guess, goals or things that you're hoping to accomplish by starting your grad program this fall?
Some of my goals are to keep an open mind with everything that is being presented to me and offered to me. And I hope to get a teaching fellowship, which is like something that grad students can do at Yale. And I would like to just meet new people from the other department and learn about different perspectives. And I know for Yale, like it's a very interdisciplinary, so we can take classes from the School of Medicine, School of Law, or like forestry or stuff like that. And so I'm going to try to take classes outside of public health as well and to learn about different viewpoints. And so my goal is just to be well-rounded in the field of public health and narrow down my interests to what I want to do specifically as well.
Excellent. Oh, great. Thank you so much. Seeing if there's any questions out there. This is the opportunity to ask these wonderful scholars and also Michelle. So any other questions before I can do one more? We definitely have some time for a few questions. Anybody? Okay. Oh, yay. Okay. What are the best resources you found at your grad school?
I haven't really been to Yale yet, but like based off my experiences of asking like just talking to the admissions people after I got accepted and learning more about the program, they're very, very, very responsive and very helpful. And it felt really different from coming from a big university like UCLA. And I felt like at Yale, they were very good at that personalized, individualized like care. And it really reflected in the 3-to-1 faculty ratio. And so the best resources that I have seen so far are definitely in the career management, as well as the opportunity to join clubs that interest you and will help you professionally.
The best resources at Teachers College are travel grants. They allow like every year, every student is able to choose like one conference they want to go to, and they'll reimburse you up to $500. So that's a great opportunity for me to like present research at a conference I want to go to, or just basically travel to a city that a conference related to my field is going to be happening at. So that's another great thing. I would say the best resources that I actually use are from people who I've met outside of the campus. New York is such a big city. I've met so many great entrepreneurs, business owners, and like real estate people who have really offered insight and help on like just my life in general. And so I would say maybe some of the best resources that you want may be from wherever you're at. It might not be from your grad school. So also branch out to other people and resources as well.
For me, the best resource that I found is the faculty at my school. Maybe something that you want to consider, possibly either whatever level you're pursuing, master's or PhD, if an institution is based off of soft money or hard money. because hard money means that the institution is paying their faculty to do research. So faculty don't necessarily have to spend a lot of their time looking and applying for grants, whereas soft money faculty are trying to pay for their salary, their projects by seeking out, writing all of these grants, and might not necessarily have time to mentor and focus on the students themselves. So Michigan itself is hard money. So I've been able to create so many opportunities by meeting faculty. They all offer me their time to set up a meeting. I worked with one faculty member and really we shared the same experiences of being first generation Vietnamese American, being a woman in the academy. And she was able to help sponsor me to present our shared research at a conference. My advisor, he's been super helpful. He used to be the head of doctoral program admissions. So he's giving me advice. He helped me get an internship this summer. So just building relationships, and they help ground me pursuing research that I really want to do.
Can I add to that list of answers as well? And definitely second what everybody has said about awesome resources that you could find in grad school. But something that was helpful for me as a student too was actually our diversity office, which is the office that I now work for. And I know Cindy and Johnny had spoken earlier about how isolating graduate school can be. And when I was an entering MPH student at Cal, we had a week-long seminar to support students from underrepresented minority and first-gen backgrounds to the transition of grad school. And it took place the week before school started. It gave me the opportunity to meet students from other concentrations, because as some of the other students said, in grad school, everyone's kind of in their own silos. So a program like that was actually so amazing at helping us kind of break out of those silos, make friends from other programs, and even continuing into the first semester, the diversity office also provided epidemiology and biostatistics tutoring. And since then, free tutoring for everyone. And since then, our services have grown substantially over the course of the past 2 years, from supporting student groups based around diversity. We do office hours with our librarian. We have a writing tutor to support students with their capstone projects and theses and proposals as well. So if those types of resources are important to you, make sure to ask the programs that you're applying to if they offer that, or if it's something that they plan on doing by the time you get there, because those can be really important to students for their success. So again, you may want to consider prioritizing your schools based on what those resources are.
Great, thank you. So we have another question here. Estimate costs you spent in applying to all the grad schools can include but not limited to travel and application fees.
So I applied to 8 graduate programs, and for SOFAs, if you can get a fee waiver for the SOFAs, for me I believe it was $120, and that's how much they took off from the total additional fees with everything. But in total, with some of the programs that had their own school application fee, I paid around $550 total for all 8 programs that I applied to. And that was including with the fee waiver from all the schools that I applied to with their application, as well as the SOFA's general application.
I'm having a really hard time remembering specific numbers, but I only applied to 4 schools. The waiver that I did had canceled out the first one. So with the other 3, I think it was around 100 something. GREs, I was lucky. One of the summer programs that I had, they paid for my GRE score, so I didn't have to take that on. When I was accepted to schools and they invited folks out to do admitted student days, I reached out to their office and the person in charge of my department asking, is there any way that you could provide me with some sort of aid to come visit because I'm really interested in the program. And Michigan gave me like $500 to like fly out. And luckily I had 2 friends who are also McNair scholars with me here. So I was able to crash at their place. But those are things you might consider.
Great. Thank you. We do have time for one more question as we are coming just about, just a couple of minutes after 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So one more question from the audience, one last one. Anybody? Going once, going twice, going for the 3rd time, 3.5. Okay, I guess we got all the questions answered. So, okay, for our panelists, any last thoughts before we close out the webinar?
I was just going to mention too, for folks that might have low self-esteem in terms of like what they're bringing to the table, even though they're high achieving and things of that sort, don't second guess yourself. Apply. You never know what's going to happen. The only way you're not going to get in is if you don't apply. And GREs are definitely daunting, but I've had friends who scored 40th percentile and lower, and they've gone in with full packages to PhD programs. So don't let that stop you at all. And if you need any help, any advice, feel free to email me. Don't second guess yourself. Apply.
That's something, to piggyback off of that, one of the first things that I learned when I came to Berkeley, one of the first phrases that I heard was to embrace your discomfort. And this is something that I now, carry with me every day when thinking about just how, difficult and challenging it is to start, the graduate school application process, to pursue new fields, to do things that you either feel like you're not good enough for or ready for. You are, and like, just embrace the discomfort through it, because that's how growth happens and that's how progress happens. And we need more students from backgrounds like ours entering the higher education field and entering fields like public health and education, because that's how we change systems, that's how we change the landscape. So know that you are meant to be here. And again, just to piggyback off of what Cindy said, is we're here to support you along the way. So don't hesitate to reach out and to ask for help when you need it.
I guess something that I would say is whatever field or program you choose to go to, get really, really good at it. Or, we're entering an intellectual community space. I mean, whatever graduate program you're in, you're excluding so many other people from being at that program where you discuss particular issues to the particular research projects or a particular type of expertise in your field. And it's like, it's a lot to get there, but if you really love that area, love that topic, and can build upon it and can create something about it, create something beyond it, and maintain like healthy relationships with the people who are in that field, I think you'll get very far. I've met a lot of resistance, a lot of people who resist the type of work that I do within my field, but there's also a lot of other communities that are advocating for the type of work that I do in my field. And so I feel like it can become a toxic space, but if you find your voice, you will be able to find other voices that are aligned with you and like-minded people, and just keep building a bigger community of scholars in whatever field you're in.
I would like to just say that regardless of the program or specialty that you want to go into, any kind of experiences that you have, whether it be volunteering or work or research, any of those kind of experiences, you can somehow relate it back to how it relates to your goals. So any kind of experience that you have academically or like personally can always go back to why you are motivated to doing what you want to do. So don't think that you're doing something that like you're working in a field or like a job that won't be relevant to what you're applying to. Like there's always something that can help you grow and learn from that. And I would also like to just say, always ask questions. And when you're in the process of applying to grad school, look up a lot of professionals on LinkedIn or like on like their job websites and try to ask for informational interviews just to know more about the things that they do and see if that really interests you. And then from there, you can start forming relationships and they can possibly be your mentor in the process of grad school as well.
Well, thank you, everyone, especially our panelists, Cindy, Johnny, Andrew, and Michelle. Got some great advice, some great tips, and thank you for participating in our webinar, and good luck to you. Let's see if there's one more question. Just check. Oh, okay, it was just a thank you. So again, I'm glad everybody's there. And if you are on the East Coast, hopefully we're not sweltering. If you're anywhere else, hopefully you're cool. But again, thank you for participating and have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone for all of your continued support of API Scholars. I know this is not the first time that you all have been involved in our programming, so I really appreciate you coming back and sharing your insights today. So thanks so much.
Happy to be here. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.